Hey everybody, my name is Jackie Bissett and my husband Danny has cystic fibrosis. Ashley has invited me to come and talk with you all today about what it's like to be married to a person with CF. Danny's had a double lung transplant, so kind of that experience. And I'm excited. I'm so excited to share my perspective. I've really enjoyed watching some of the other videos, and away we go. So, Danny was born with cystic fibrosis, diagnosed at birth. He celebrated his 34th birthday this year. And 2 years ago, this month actually, he had a double lung transplant. So, he sort of experienced the whole gamut of the CF patient experience. Often, the quote-unquote cure right now is a double lung transplant to extend life. So we've experienced the disease leading up to that, during that, and now post-transplant. So a little background about us. Danny and I met in high school, but we did not date in high school. Interestingly enough, though, our high school did one of the largest high school fundraisers for cystic fibrosis. And so even before Danny and I started dating, I had a experience with CF and some knowledge about it. So we never had to have that conversation. I always knew from the very beginning of our dating that he had CF and an idea of what that meant. But as you all know, knowing about the disease and living with it are two very different things. So Danny and I got married. We celebrated 8 years this past summer, the summer of July 2010. At that time, he was fairly healthy. College, his early baby years, young years, spent a lot of time in the hospital. Then as a kiddo and going into high school, he was a big athlete. That really kept him pretty healthy. Did regular tune-ups, home IVs, that kind of thing. But for the most part, had a normal childhood. And then when he got to college, things definitely got a lot harder. He didn't play as many sports, and so that affected his lung development, strength, all those things. And we started dating in college, and that is really when his lungs started to take a turn for the worse. And as you all know, around that late teens, early 20s, when you start losing that lung function, it can be really hard to get it back. So we got married at 25, and right about the same time that we got married, we started hearing the transplant word. It would be another 6 years till we'd actually have the transplant. And if you choose to read a little bit more about our story on my blog, I kind of blog through that process and preparing for transplant and listing and all those things. And I always like to say that that was our experience. We tell our story. Everybody's is different. Everyone has to figure out what works for them. But yeah, I've had the experience of walking through as a caregiver, both in CF, sick CF, pre-transplant and post-transplant, which has been, was an adventure for sure. But today I'm going to actually look at some of the questions that other CF patients that have been featured on Ashley's blog answered, and I'm going to kind of switch them up a little bit for how I would answer them as a spouse. So what have you learned through having CF? So my question is going to be, what have you learned being married to somebody with CF? I think the biggest thing that I've learned is perseverance. With CF, you have to constantly be ready to change course of action, find new ways of dealing with complications, understand new medications, all these things. And it gives you this really strong fighter spirit. And being so intimately connected to somebody who has to have that fighter spirit, you develop it too. And I think it's given us a good foundation for both as individuals and then also as a married couple to understand that life is complicated, and having the ability to, when you get knocked down, get back up, even if it takes you a little while, find a new way to go around, do something, figure it out for yourself is huge. And it really gives you a strong ability to tackle things that come your way, which is part of just life. Everybody's got something. I sometimes think it could be a little bit harder because CF patients, something might come earlier than other people's, but everybody's got something. And I think with the CF stubbornness and fighter spirit, like I said, you really know how to push ahead and figure things out. And I think the other thing that's been really incredible in my life experience being married to somebody, yes, we have to do things differently. Our careers look differently. Our marriage looks different. How we will have a family looks different. But nothing is off the table. And I don't mean to sound like just go for your dreams and everything's possible, because certainly there's lots of challenges and you have to be prepared to switch gears and come up with different way of approaching it. But Danny has taught me to not just accept no, or that you can't do something, just be prepared and willing to work hard, because you might have to do it a little bit different. Doesn't mean it can't be done. Doesn't mean that you can't experience life. It just has to be done a little bit different. And I think that that's a lesson that has saved me over and over again in my own life, in our marriage, and in our fight against CF. So what are you thankful for living with CF? I think kind of along with the perseverance piece, being married to somebody with CF, you have this instilled bravery. You have to face things that a lot of people don't normally face, don't necessarily want to face, and you're constantly having to figure out a way to face it. Facing transplant is a huge, scary beast, but also just scary is facing a pile of medical bills, and you're constantly having to find a way to be brave and say, I passed this hurdle, I can face this hurdle. Even if you're doing them one at a time, and even if your bravery takes you a few days or weeks or months to gather it all up and move forward, you are given a bravery because you're given a life that not a lot of people would want to have to endure. You didn't have a choice, but because of that, if you're still here, you've made the best of it and found a way to get through it. And that's a huge secret to life. Figure out your path and go forward. And I'm just so grateful that that bravery Danny has had and has also instilled it in me. And it's really helped us to not take no for an answer. And when things get hard and scary, remember all the hard things that we've already done, and we can keep going. What is something you wish people understood about CF? So for me, I think I'm going to answer it. What do I wish people understood about being in a relationship and married to someone with such a significant illness? First of all, I got married for love. So I always love that people ask me, did you know he was sick? Like I didn't know, or that would have changed something, or I don't know. I always find it really fascinating that people ask me that. Did you know he was sick? Do you know that he's going to die? Are you prepared to be a widow young? We got married because we believed that we brought out the best in each other and that we would help each other navigate this life with our best versions going forward. We brought more to each other's life and that we wanted to share that life. That's why we got married. So the illness thing, it was just part of Danny. It just was what it was. There's really nothing else to explain about that. It just was what it was. And for right or for wrong, I didn't think about it as much because I just wanted to share my life with him. So the other half of that is, and I've talked to other CF spouses about this, there's this hero complex that can come with, I married someone who has an illness. Some of it you get from the outside influence. Some of it you grow on your own because you are facing hard things and you feel like, hey, I gave up whatever, XYZ to be in the hospital with you, or hey, I have to work full time because you can't, and you should be grateful and all these things. But here's the bottom line. When people say to me, you are lucky, or sorry, Danny is lucky to have you. We are lucky to have each other. Um, I don't walk around with my illness so well known, but I've got a whole bag of my own stuff that Danny has to deal with. I'm a planner. I have OCD. I have anxiety. CF doesn't necessarily help or pair well with any of those things. He has to deal with that. So it's not he's so lucky to have you. We're so lucky to have each other. And navigating that for us has been a constant learning curve, standing up every day and choosing to be in a relationship and choosing to love each other and choosing that other person over and over again. This is my only marriage, so I just assume marriage is like that. But CF puts a huge microscope on it. And a lot of people outside kind of judge it. And so that also makes you feel like you're on a platform. But in a bizarre way, it can be a blessing because you're required to figure out a way to partner through this. And that partnership has given us constant strength, constant examples to put the other person first, to have hard conversations, to learn. And it is not all roses, and we have not done it all right, for sure. I highly recommend therapy. We've done that to kind of work through issues, to prepare ourselves for transplant, for post-transplant. We've really had to manage it and figure it out, but it has made us as people and us as a couple so much stronger. And for that, we are lucky. Danny's not just lucky. I'm not just lucky. We are lucky. And it is my belief that our world is richer because we have each other, illnesses and idiosyncrasies and all these things aside. So yeah, and I hope people can come to understand that. I didn't marry him because he was sick, and I wouldn't not marry him because he was sick. And I hope the fact that we're still married, he would choose me over my own set of crazy all the time. And we're lucky that way. Most difficult hardship with CF. So I don't have CF, and I think that can be really sensitive because CF is a huge part of my life, but I don't have it. So I always get a little bit nervous answering this because I'm not the one that feels cruddy all the time. I'm not the one that's sick, but we share a life. So we share parts of the illness, not all of it, but certainly parts of it. And I think one of the hardest things about it is kind of going back to that perseverance piece. CF is an ever-changing disease. Just looking at its history, it used to be a small children's disease, and now it's morphed into an adult disease, and that means that people have marriages and become parents and have careers, all with having to manage cystic fibrosis. And that's a whole new landscape for this disease, for this community. And so it can be your trailblazers. And one of the biggest things that has been probably, I guess, my hardest, the answer to that question would be there is no perfect path. I've looked at people that survived transplant and I thought, oh, I'll just go over there, ask them what they did, get their whole plan, and follow it to a T, and then Danny will be fine and we'll go on living our life. No problem. That's not how it works. There is no perfect path. Taking the transplant piece, transplant experiences vary widely. There's people that have been waiting months and months on a list. We were told we'd be waiting 6 months and we got lungs in 2 days. The rejection piece that we're actually walking a little bit through right now is really different. The cocktail of medications that are needed to manage transplant are different for everybody. How you feel about them, your reactions, what will happen to you, and how that infuses into your life is different for everybody. And I was so convinced if we could just find the right path, someone's example, and we follow it, we would be good. We would be fine. It just doesn't work that way. And I think that having to let that go and just know that we have to do what we think is best for Danny and what we think is best for our life and in that scenario has been a challenge because you want to do well and you want to succeed. But I will say the faster that you kind of accept that it's different for everybody and you've got to find your own path and you've got to be comfortable in your heart and in your gut with what works for you all, the easier the journey is, because there isn't anybody that understands it, and there isn't anybody that's journey is going to look just like yours. And that's the same thing with life, but it's definitely magnified in CF. So I think it's really hard to know that it can be isolating. Your path isn't going to be the same as everybody's. Your success story is going to be discovered in a different way than someone else's success. And you want the guidebook for life and CF, and it doesn't really exist. So I think the good news about that part, though, is that this community is so strong, and as the disease evolves, we all are learning that it's different for everybody. So instead of, I felt like a couple years ago, maybe it was just our journey, people kind of infuse their opinions. This is what you have to do. This is the place you need to go. These are the doctors you need to see. Now we're realizing it's different for everybody, and everybody's experience is going to be different. And so, there's not as much pressure to do it a certain way necessarily, or maybe we've just stopped listening and figured it out a little bit on our own. But there's just an appreciation that I can't understand exactly how you feel or what you're going through, or that med affected you differently, or, your marriage and CF is different than ours. But I can tell you that I understand what it feels like to feel isolated, and I can understand what it feels like to be frustrated, and I understand how exhausting it is to have to cancel plans on people and lose friendships because people don't understand. I can appreciate that, and it is hard, and I get it too. So I think there's some difficulty there, but there's also some real beauty and an awesome opportunity to just plug into this community. So the last question for me tonight is, what advice would you give to someone with CF? And I'm going to split it up into two. First I'm going to talk to the CF patient. And again, take it with a grain of salt. I get that after I just said that answer, we're all different. But here's my thoughts on CF in a relationship. If someone has chosen to share their life with you, it does not mean that they will understand how you feel. It does not mean that they have necessarily the right to say, CF affects my life too. I can understand and appreciate how that will probably frustrate you. But know this, if someone has wanted to share their life with you and love you unconditional, it won't be perfect, but try to let them in. They're just trying to be your partner, and if they're frustrated with you about your meds or treatment or whatever, it comes from them wanting to have you in their life as long as humanly possible. And if you're willing to try to share what that walk feels like, Danny has often said to me, it can be hard worrying about a spouse because you're not just having to take care of yourself anymore, you're having to worry about someone else. I'm sure it is hard, but on the same hand, it's only because we want to be part of their life. So do your best. It's got to be hard, but try to be patient and share with us what it's like, because we want to be in this with you. And so then I say to the life partner or spouse, friend, whatever, of CF, here's the thing. You're going to feel like you're competing with CF. And if you would have asked the Jackie of several years ago, I wouldn't have had the same answer. But this is what this disease does. It morphs and grows and changes. Here's the bottom line. Danny has been in a relationship with CF longer than he's been in a relationship with me. It will always be that way. And I don't have to compete, and I don't have to be perfect with it, but I just need to accept that. Danny has had this disease longer than he's had me, and it just is a fact. So then when you kind of learn to accept that, the next part I would say is fight the urge to prove that you're allowed to be in the disease with the person. His parents, my parents, our doctors, our medical team, when they ask you how he's doing, or is he taking this med, or is he taking care of himself, there's this reaction that I had, and I've talked to other CF spouses, that you somehow feel like they're asking you, are you taking good enough care of him? Are you making sure he's doing everything he needs to do? Like it's all on you. It's not. I'm talking about Danny, so I keep saying Danny in this instance. Danny's his own person. He's an adult and he makes his own decisions. And just because he chooses to skip a treatment or not go with a med or anything like that, it doesn't mean that he wants to shorten his life here with me, that I'm not a good enough wife, that I don't deserve to be in the room with CF, all those things. Fight that urge to prove that you're good enough to be there, to make room for you. So it's not all on you. Danny is his own person. Your spouse are their own people, and they are making choices. It's not reflecting how they feel or if they want to be in this life with you or even want you around CF. It's just their own walk and their own experience. Because often what happens is you feel defensive and then you get mad at the person with CF. Why aren't you doing this? And don't you love me enough? Or don't you want to stay here? Or don't you want to take care of yourself? Or just, this is what I'm asking you to do. And it can lead to the snowball of fighting, anger, frustration. And it has taken us years to figure this out. But once I did, it made a huge difference. And not once I did, once we did, it made a huge difference. Because basically, they don't want to hear that, why don't you want to be here with me? What they want to hear is, I'm your partner here, and how can we do this together? What can I do to make whatever treatment, med, hospitalization that you're trying to avoid or don't want to do, how can I do something to help you accomplish it? What that tells them is you're not fighting for a space in the room and a voice in their treatment plan and all. I'm just here for you because we're partners in life, and that means in CF. And what I found is, as I said that, then Danny talked back with me and shared with me why he doesn't want to do it, or what's a frustration, or, emotionally what this means, or physically what this means. And so often it opened the lines of really good communication. And we discovered things that I didn't even understand, or he didn't know that I was feeling. And that makes a huge difference. So fight the urge to prove that you're doing a good enough job. It's not about you. Find a way to say, let me partner with you. Can I help you set up your meds? Can I help with the timer? What can I do? And finally, there will come times where you don't always agree with the person that has the illness. And if you are constantly demanding that your voice be heard, and how I was about it was forcing myself in the room or demanding that I have an opinion or this is my life too. If you're doing that, then it's almost like the boy who cried wolf. They just assume you're always having an answer and an opinion and influence. If you're quiet, if you're willing to just be their partner, then when you do stand up and say, hey, I don't feel good about this, or I know that that's what you want, but in my heart, this is what I feel, they'll be more receptive and they'll understand that it's coming from a place of love. And from there, I just feel like you have the opportunity to remember that you're first in a relationship, second dealing with CF. So those are my thoughts on Ashley's great questions. Ashley, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to think about these answers. The life of CF is really hard, and patients are called to it not by choice. Spouses and those in the relationship are called by choice, but it really is a calling, and I think it gives you an awesome opportunity to have a unique life and to be brave and to find a way to make your dreams come true, even if they look a little different than everybody else's. So thanks so much for having me, and I look forward to connecting with you all online.
Through the Blooming Roses Project, cystic fibrosis warriors are able to share the ups and the downs and give advice from their experiences.
Good morning.
Hi, my name is Nick DeBreezy Jr.
Hi, I'm Abby Robinson. My name is Angel Mamino Haynes. My name is Melissa Papatronius, and I have cystic fibrosis. What's going on?
Hi, I'm Brad Dell, and I have cystic fibrosis and a double lung transplant, and I am recording from the beach.
It says, hey girl, either I hyperventilate every time I see you, or I just have a crazy lung disease called cystic fibrosis.
If you have cystic fibrosis and you would like to have your story told, I would love to have you be a part of the Blooming Roses Project. You can email me at ashleysrosesofficial@gmail.com and I can discuss with you further how we can get you on the next episode of this series.
And then what else do we have to say? Don't forget to like below.